She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fischer.
Okay, kids, I want you to gather around the radio because this is where Miss Lisa brought in the expert for you, the expert on estate planning. And I know a lot of listeners are thinking that's what people do when they're old or they're wealthy or they have a million relatives or no. My friend Mary Nash will tell you differently. She's famous here in Arkansas because she's been on our television sets and on the radio with her dog, and she's going to use her famous tagline in a minute. But Mary, what is it people need to know in estate planning? What is it you say in your spots?
We always say, Bear and I, if you have a dollar and two relatives, you need to do some estate planning because you don't want your relatives fighting over your stuff.
And Bear is in her lap right now. Many of you will see this on YouTube. Those of you gathered around your device on the podcast, definitely check out the YouTube link for this episode because Bear's famous, right?
Oh, yes, he's a puppa-legal. Probably
Oh,
the only puppa-legal in the world.
yes, probably. Okay, so full disclosure, pull the curtain back. I called you a few weeks ago, and you so enlightened my husband and me about estate planning. We already planned our estate, but because I'm the executor of my aunt's will, we really didn't know what all's involved with hers. And so you have to bring in the experts. You're the expert, but kind of explain to me what's the first thing people need to know as they're aging, whether they're 25 listening to this, 55 or 85. What should everyone be doing now?
Everyone should be getting their planning together. And so many people think that all they have to do is have a will. Or I had a man the other day tell me his son was the only son and therefore he'd get everything and he didn't need to do anything else. A will is a ticket to probate. Probate is set up to get your bills paid. So it's a court action. Here in Arkansas, you have to wait 6 months after you run it 2 ads in the newspaper, letting the world know that there may be some claims out there. Well, what do I mean by claims? Well, it might be debts. It might be, you hit somebody's pickup truck and now they're trying to get some money out of it. And so it goes to probate for the judge to determine what you owe before anything goes out to the heirs. And of course, if you do nothing, you don't have a will, the law says where things go. And your heirs are your bloodline, your blood relatives, your children. Okay. And what people don't understand if they're in a second marriage is my children are my children, not my spouse's children. So if we own a home together with right of survivorship and I die, it belongs to my husband. And then when he dies, it belongs to his kids, not my kids.
Oh, got
Okay.
it.
And so
So
we
does
have to
the
do some
does the
planning.
will so if the will is the ticket to probate, does the will start uh, dividing up at that point all property?
Everything you own has to go through probate to get to your heirs. Okay. That would be an account that has just my name on it. Okay. It would be my real estate that is deeded in my name. Everything I own has to go through the probate process to change ownership over to my children. I'm assuming that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I do nothing, I still have to go through the probate process, and then the law says where it goes to my blood children, okay, grandchildren, great grandchildren down the bloodline. If it is a will, and I say I'm leaving kid number one out because I don't like them anymore, that kid can still come to the court and say, "Mom didn't know what she was doing," or "Mom was
Oh.
influenced by my sister to leave me out." So I'm going to contest it.
Oh,
So now we
shoot.
have a fight in the courts. The
How do
judge
you
makes the
prove
decisions.
right? How does child one prove that mom was not of sound mind when a lawyer of sound mind, I assume, wrote it up, signed it, and sealed it and delivered it?
Okay. Well, we have to test to make sure that you are of sound mind. I had a client one time who came in, and I was kind of testing her a little bit, and I asked, what do you think of the president? And she started talking, and then she said, and he had, it was at that time, it was Obama, and he had been off on a trip that weekend. This was a Monday. And she said, he's in a wheelchair. She was in her early 90s. And I said, oh, did he get hurt? And she goes, no, he has polio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I knew she was not current in time and
Mm-hmm.
place. We couldn't do any planning for her. So we asked things like, what's your full name? What's your birth date? Where were you born? Do you have children? What are their names? Full names? What are their birth dates? Sometimes even, as we get older, we think, let's see now, what's the date of that kid's birthday?
Oh,
But,
I do it now.
normally
Yeah.
we
Mm-hmm.
can, we make sure that you are current in time and space. You are okay to make decisions for yourself. We usually ask if they come with their son or daughter, we usually ask them to wait out in the lobby until we spend a little time with mom to make sure she's not being influenced by that child. And we ask them, do you want me to bring the child in? Is there anything you need to tell me in advance? And so we go through those tests before we have the client sign anything. Want to make sure that they're competent to do that. And then when they come in to sign, because there's a time and space between the time we talk to them and get the paperwork done, we have them maybe go through some of those things again, confirming. Now, your daughter's name is Matilda, and her middle name is what again? Just confirming those things, right? And then we tell the client, now we're going to spend probably a year getting this from death to distribution. And the client will often, well, I don't want that. I want my kids or grandkids to get this now. Well, then you need to be looking at a living trust. And then we avoid probate if we put everything in the name of the trust. And I always try to get clients to think about a trust as a box. Your lawyer designs the box based on your specifications. Then we put all of your assets in the box in your name trustee. Three characters are acting in trust planning. The trust maker, or often called the grantor,
Okay.
that's the person who made the trust. And by gosh, I can change it anytime I want to, kid. Don't you mess with me. I can take
Right.
you out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the trustee, the manager. I can spend the money, I can save the money, I can use it, abuse it, whatever. But at my death, my successor trustee, the person I trust the most in the world, will distribute, not a probate judge. Okay?
Then what's the executor?
The executor is to a will as a successor trustee is to a trust. So the
Oh.
executor is the person that files the will in the court. Hopefully, the court will appoint them as the executor because I have named them in my will. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm the person responsible for collecting up the bills, collecting up the assets, and reporting to the court. And then when I have permission to pay the bills by the judge, I'm the person responsible for paying the bills. When I can show that the bills are all paid, I can go to the court and say, okay, judge, I'm ready to distribute. Let's do it. But I still have to wait for the judge to say go.
And is it always a 6-month window?
Well, here it is in Arkansas, okay,
Okay.
where there and in every state there is a creditors or right, I guess you'd say the claims window, where the court's going to say, "I'm giving these people time to get in here and tell us that there is something owed," and probate basically is set up to get your bills paid.
And let's say the person involved is in a nursing home with you would, I guess at that time, have no debts. Well, I mean, I get, well, no, not necessarily, because you could still own a home and some other things. Is there anybody who's in the nursing home then that's totally autonomous from any financial obligations and then it would go
Okay,
speedier, or does it?
no, we talk about here in Arkansas about we call it the Medicaid cross because Medicaid is a cross you have to bear,
Yeah.
and people get confused about Medicare, which
Yeah.
pays your hospital doctor bills, those
Right.
things, and Medicaid. Medicaid pays your room and board in a nursing home, and the Medicaid cross tells us what you can keep. And so and we tell everybody draw a cross on a piece of paper, and on the left side of the cross you write the word assets. What can I keep and be on Medicaid and be in a nursing home? Well, if I'm the one in the nursing home, the institutional spouse, I can keep $2,000. I can have a prepaid burial. If I have a spouse, my spouse and I can keep the house and a car, right? And my spouse can keep in Arkansas now in increments up to $150,000, let's say. Okay.
Okay.
Everything else has to be spent down. No, it's down to $2,000 and the 150,000. Now, move to the other side of the cross and you write the word income. Okay? And the income that I in the nursing home in Arkansas can keep is $40. So the rest of my money goes to pay DHS, Department of Human Services, for me to be in a nursing home. Now, my spouse on the other side, okay, she's got to have some, or he's got to have some money to live.
Right.
So they can keep their income. And if they don't have enough income, let's say we've got a wife who's bringing in $800 a month because she didn't really work during her lifetime, she can draw up to about $3,000 from his income. The rest of it has to go to pay for care. Now, care here in Arkansas right now is running about $8,000 a month. So, most families don't have that much income coming in. And remember, if we've got a spouse at home, we've got to take care of that spouse at home.
Right.
So you're basically down to broke by the time you get to on Medicaid. Okay. And that's not what any of us want.
No.
So we talk about how do I avoid that? You can do what's called a Medicaid pre planning trust, but it has to be in place 5 years before you apply for Medicaid in order for you to preserve your assets. But there's some things we can't transfer over immediately to a Medicaid pre planning trust. For example, if you've got an IRA, if we move it over to the trust, you got to pay the taxes. None of us want to do that. Okay.
Right.
So, what we're thinking about there is I need to plan in advance and make sure that all my assets can be salvaged. Well, if I still have the IRA outside, I would use that to pay for, I hope, in home care. Someone
Mm-hmm.
comes in, takes care of me as long as I can
Mm-hmm.
stay at home. So I can exhaust that and not have that and have everything else in my Medicaid pre planning trust if it's been in place for 5 years. I have preserved everything I have so that it goes to my kids. And that's what we all want. I didn't work all my life to give it
Right. That
to the state.
right. That's what I'm seeing now just with my own
Yeah,
family member is in being respectful to the good living her husband, my uncle, had provided. I know that that's their opinion that he is deceased. My aunt's still alive. She's almost 99. But in saying that, of her saying, we didn't work all this time
that's right.
to
That's right.
roll down the window and throw the money out on
Right.
care for her
Yes.
heirs. So it's a formidable task for anybody who is a trustee or executor because it's a huge
That's right.
responsibility then to start having to make
That's
these
right.
decisions. I will tell you, I know
Yes.
this personally, but in this
Yes.
because you did this for my husband and I. My husband and for my husband and me. I have to get my grammar right. For my husband and me, when we were driving on the road and I did the cross and all that. So here's one thing I do need to clarify. Does the government look at Social Security benefits as income?
No.
Okay,
But
so
it is income. Well, let me rephrase that. Okay. When we talk about Social Security, that is income, and my
oh,
retirement is income. Okay, and
okay,
I can keep some of my spouse's income,
okay,
but it is still income. Now, when you're talking about a trust, okay, income is everything you've got coming in, which would be rent, it would be Social Security, it would be retirement money, whatever you've got coming in. Well, the state looks at that the same way. Now, if we're talking about Social Security benefits, as in Social Security is paying me on a disability basis, that might not be the same thing. It doesn't have to be repaid. Department of Human Services provides your Medicaid, okay, and that is a recovery benefit in most states, which means when you die, if you go to probate, that is a debt that has to be settled. So I get the state of Arkansas gets its money back from the estate. That may or may not be true with a trust.
so what do you recommend for people that do living trusts just across the board?
Okay. When people come in to see me, no health issues, and they're young, let's say they're in their 30s or 40s, and normally when we have people in their 30s come in, we're dealing with a separate issue. I've got a child who is not yet an adult. Okay.
Right.
Who's going to raise my child to
Yes.
adulthood? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the guardian. Okay. Who's going to handle my child's money? We like to separate those two so that the person who is the guardian is not buying a house for all the whole them and the kids to live in, as we had
Right.
happen one time,
Mm-hmm.
and buying themselves a new Escalade to drive their kids and these kids back and
Mm-hmm.
forth to school. So we're trying to separate the money from the children. So I've got a financial person, maybe it's Uncle John, Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got Grandma Sue raising the kid. So Grandma says, John, I need money for tuition. Okay. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, I'll write a check for that. I need money for school clothes. I'll write a check for that. Now a kid's 16. John, I need money to send the kid back and forth to school because they need a car. Okay. I can do
Mm-hmm.
that. You're using the money for the benefit of the child. Okay. Because grandma's raising the child. So we got
Mm-hmm.
that issue to deal with. Okay. If we have young children. So that's why we recommend, oh God, please, every young parent, the minute you have a baby, get in here and let's make some decisions about who's going to raise the child, who's going to handle their money. Okay. Then we move to people that are a little more established. My child's in college, or my child's now an adult, has children of their own. And I always say, as a grandmother myself, if I'd have figured out how to have the grandkid, I wouldn't have had the kids.
Hear,
You know,
hear, preach. It's amazing. We should have never had kids, just had
yeah.
grandkids.
Except I said that one time to a client who looked at me and said, "And where would you send them when you got tired of them?" I
No,
said, "Oh, I didn't think about that."
that's true. The parents are, I forget, I take it back. Parents are very valuable.
Yeah, it's very valuable. Okay. But what you're talking about here is, okay, I've got kids now that are adults. Maybe they're not responsible adults, you
Right.
know.
Right.
I have a wonderful 25-year-old grandson who's very responsible, but he's not through school yet and he's not
Right.
completely settled into his career. So I have his set up so that at age 30, he gets 5% every year. I can change that anytime I want to because a revocable living trust, not the Medicaid pre planning trust, a revocable living trust, which we use for almost everybody except someone worried about nursing home. Okay.
Right. I see now.
I'm going to set it up so that it goes to my son, my daughter, and my grandson. And I can change my mind anytime he shows me that he's responsible enough to handle it all. Otherwise, I can spill it out to him in little droplets and make him earn $35,000 a year W-2 or 1099 income before he gets anything.
Right.
And I told him that when he was 15, and he said, "Are you kidding me? Nobody makes that kind of money." So
Oh, isn't that
now that he's
cute?
now that he's making that kind of money, it's
Right.
working out just fine for him.
Right.
But you can put rules on it. I don't want my kid to spend it. I might have a child that has an addiction of some
Well,
sort. I
that's
want to
what I'm thinking
spill it
of.
out.
Well, let's say you write this up. I say it more as a grandparent because my kids are fine. But let's say I write it up and then I see that my grandchildren were involved or named in it, but then I'm seeing, and mine are 5 and 3, but at some point when they're 25 and 23, there might be addiction, or they may have married
Yes.
somebody that I'm worried about.
Yes.
My
Yes.
assets, my what I've worked hard for. Then you can go in then at any time and say, you know what, we're gonna put the pause button on that one kid, and we're gonna write in a caveat or something.
That's right. It's a revocable living trust. I
Okay,
can amend it at any time. Okay.
all right.
So I left it, let's pretend I left it to my two children with the
Uh huh.
understanding that when I died, they would leave it to their children. In other words, I
Uh huh.
dictated that. All right.
Hmm.
And then I start watching my grandchild uh, go in the wrong direction.
Uh huh.
Okay. Picking the wrong people to
Right.
associate with. I can come back and amend the trust and restrict what that child gets or grandchild gets. And we use the age of 30 kind of as our golden rule. If I have a grandchild under the age of 30 and parent dies, I have another, and usually it's one of the aunts or uncles, manage that child's money until they turn 30, meeting their needs. What are my needs? Well, I need money for tuition.
Right.
I need tires for my car.
Okay.
I need anything but a Dodge Hellcat that's $80,000.
Right.
And so I can go to my aunt or uncle, who is my trustee from my trust that I got from my grandparents through my father, okay, and say, I need tires for my car. I need tuition. I need books. Can you help me? Need. It's not control. They can't go and demand. They can go and ask. Then at age 30, if they are not uh, into some sort of something like drugs or alcohol, or
Uh huh.
maybe, a good person, they
Hmm.
come to the uncle and they say, Uncle John, can I have my trust now to manage? And Uncle John says, Oh God, I never thought you'd get to 30. Yes, here it is. Go.
Yes. Yes.
Or he says, Son, we've been using this money to pay for drug treatment. You have not recovered. So I'm going to hold on to this. And we make that arbitrary. Has to be a compelling reason to hold on to it. But we give them the authority to do that so that we hope the child gets their head together. and then we can begin to move forward. But if I see my grandchild has turned out to be a doctor, or he's doing great and moving forward in life,
Mhm.
I can change that. I can say, whenever I die, he can have it. And that's all there is to it. I
Now,
don't care.
do you have to petition the courts all along the way, like every turn in this, or in some places can the the trustee make decisions based on what the trust subjectively?
Yes, because what we're talking about there is we want to meet your needs, whatever those needs are,
All right.
based on what the trustee thinks are your needs.
Okay.
Okay, as I said, an $80,000 car might not be a need.
Right.
Okay,
It's not.
but
I can tell you that.
I'm 28 years old. I'm married. I have a child. I'd like to
Well,
buy a house.
yes.
Could I have
Okay.
a down payment?
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. I'm a butthole, so you wouldn't want me in this position because, I would say no to all of it. And my husband would too. So my poor grandchildren they're really going to have to tap dance to get anything. Um, does, does the revocable living trust then change every time? This is what I always thought that, and I don't know if this is right, but we did this for our kids however many years ago. And when we go on a trip, I always text my family and say, Sydney, you get the fur that is the brown one because you have red hair. And I say, Anna Margaret, you get all my silver jewelry because you look better in it. And then they say, Mom, I cannot believe we're having this death conversation every time you leave us. But that's how I feel like the movies have it, that if I didn't spell it out in my revocable living trust, do I have to write it down and give them a record as to who gets what?
Okay. Now we have in all of our trusts what's called a personal property memorandum. And
Okay.
so I write down periodically things that I think the children might want. Now, let me just explain to you that, like my son, when you ask your children, is there anything of mine you want? They're going to say, I don't want any of your junk. I got my own junk.
Right.
But here's the thing about it. And that's why we say if you have a dollar and two relatives, you need to do some estate planning.
Right.
What we're talking about is what that jewelry that you're wearing right now. I don't want that jewelry. My mother's here, but my mother dies. And I want that more than anything in this world. And I don't want my brother's wife wearing it, and I'll kill him if he gets it. And
Exactly.
and so what happens here is we write down in our personal property memorandum
Okay.
where I want my jewelry to go, piece by piece, if necessary. Now I kind of tease and say men only have two things: guns and tools, and sometimes fishing
And
stuff.
maybe a
Okay,
wedding ring and a watch, and that's it.
yeah, maybe. Okay, all right.
Hmm.
And so when we get past that, everything else belongs to us women. And so I
Hmm.
want my personal stuff, my jewelry, to go to wherever I want it to go. I sure don't want it to go to my husband's next wife. So
No.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say this my wedding ring to my daughter Sue, and then you say when. If I die first, my daughter gets these things, these
Okay.
pieces of jewelry. My husband would write down the same thing. My shotgun to my grandson. If I die first, wife goes and gets it, passes it out. And
Okay.
then the third category is when we both die. That's when the bedroom set and the truck goes and those things that we don't need anymore. And oftentimes when you ask your children, it's like, oh, that's weird because I'm thinking about mama being dead.
That's what my kids were
But
saying. They're like, "This is so
yes, that's right.
macabre. I can't believe you're bringing
Yes,
this up." And I go, "We're on the road. I don't know. I mean, we may go see the Lord.
that's
I
right.
don't know."
That's right. Exactly. But
Yeah.
if you've written down these pieces, these things, okay, that's a legal instruction. And when the time comes, if you die first, your husband's going to give those things out. If you
Okay.
die, both of you die, you're gone, then
Right.
we've got somebody who is our successor trustee who will pass those things out according to my wishes. And then they will decide where the rest of it goes.
Don't you think that is a valuable thing to do? Again, it's the dollar and two relatives. Even if you think what you have doesn't have a lot of value, it might have sentimental value to those twin
That's
daughters
it.
who are going to fight tooth and nail over the blank.
Yes, that's it. That's what we're talking about. All right. It doesn't mean anything to me now because mama's here. But the
Right.
sentimental value of those earrings that you're wearing that you bought at Walmart, okay, is oh, this is so important. Because if I've got it, I can open my hand at any time and see my sweet mother wearing those earrings. It means the world to me. And if and it's lots of times it's kind of like my sister's husband is now wearing my daddy's watch or something like that, and
Uh-huh.
I'll kill her. I'm just not going to put up with it. And families break up over this kind of stuff and never speak to each other again.
I know
You
they
know?
do all the time. And now I'm seeing it. Now
Yes.
I can understand it. Now that you made this very visual. I know there's a very, very wealthy woman in Little Rock of generational wealth. And I saw her one time and I was talking to her because she's often approached, I'm sure, about her generational wealth. And I said something about, oh, the ashes of her late husband, and she said something that now is making sense to me. She said, "Yes, I have the urn beside my bed, but I'm sure they'll fight about that too someday." And it's making
Yes.
me
Yes.
think that maybe things weren't doled out specifically to
Yes.
each child, and it's a constant source of conflict.
Yes. And people fight. I'm talking about like fight, like physically fight.
Wow.
I had three sisters not long ago that inherited 6,000 acres of level farmland. Okay, worth a fortune. We divided it all up, got the deeds done, everything's fine,
Yeah.
surveyed, everything's great. And then they got in a fight over stuff left in the old farmhouse. Mom had been in a nursing home almost 2 years. She'd been sitting there all that time. Okay, we had a three broken ribs, a busted kneecap, and a concussion out of that Sunday afternoon fight,
Mary!
taking stuff out. That's true story. Yeah, and you know what the big fight about, which is where the broken ribs came in? They were
Please
fighting
tell
over
me.
a dough roller, fighting over a
Stop
dough
it.
roller
Stop it.
that they said Uncle John made.
Stop.
Okay, and it was bought at Walmart. Uncle
Mary.
John didn't make it at all,
Oh, Mary,
but
that's the
they were
funniest thing.
fighting with each other,
That's the
physically
funniest thing
fighting.
I've ever heard. Was that in
I know.
Arkansas?
Yes,
I love
it
it.
was in Arkansas. Yep,
I
it
love
was.
it. That's the
Yep,
best
yep.
drop the mic kind of moment I've had in a podcast in a long time because we've got to wrap up anyway and we can't top that story. I will I
that
will
that was
always
my best one.
I will always remember you, Mary, as the lady who tried to show us that families need to behave.
Exactly. And I wrote the book called Greed Made Me Do It, and it's full of stories about people doing this exact same thing to each other. I'm
Mary,
grateful that I'm an only
I
child.
I am, yeah, right. I am going to put is your book available still that people can buy it?
Oh, yes, it's on Amazon.
Okay. I'm going to
Okay.
put that in the show notes as well as other things, and anyone in Arkansas can you consult people in other states, or do they have to be within the state of
I'm
Arkansas?
licensed in Florida and Indiana and Colorado, and so I can work in any of those states.
Okay. Well, that's you got four great states in the U.S. of A. And Mary Nash can represent you. Mary, you're a delight. I'm glad I've gotten to know you. Where's your pup? What's he called? Your pup legal? Your
Papa Legal? Papa
yeah,
Legal
pup.
crawled back in his bed and he's asleep, snoring away.
Okay. Well, I hope everything works well for the rest of you, and we're going to make you famous, Mary. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You're a doll, Lisa. I really appreciate you, girl.
Thank you. Okay, let's we talked about the spin down, Sarah-Catherine, and now and that's important. That's to prepare for those final years for an aging parent. But look, the rest of us, I mean, I may look old, but I'm not aging as much as I think I am, and we have to get our finances in order. So, how do we start preparing, let's say 40s, 50s and 60s? Let's say someone they haven't done much, or we know the stock market obviously vacillates and some people have lost their hide, and whether it was 2008 or this last couple of years it's been rocky. What can people start doing now?
Hi, Lisa. Yes, I mean, that's exactly right. It's time. And, I would say step one of reversing a trend of like not having enough savings or anything like that, step one is going to be a mindset shift.
Oh, that's good.
You have
Mindset is everything. I'm seeing that as I age. I'm seeing mindset is everything.
Yeah, and I would love to hear more about like your perspective from health, because I think it's the same
Yeah.
that we see on the financial side. But there is a shift that has to happen where this becomes a priority. And here's the deal. I have never seen a more motivated group in our retirement plans and financial wellness programs than people who enter their 50s. To some degree, people in their mid 40s, like kind of in my age group, but certainly there is a mindset shift that is a much easier shift when you are 50 years old and saying, wait, I don't want to have to work the rest of my life. I don't want to have to make decisions in my mid 60s, be able to stop work or work less, or have to cut my lifestyle dramatically. And the coolest thing is that a good 25 or 30% savings rate starting in your 50s, even if you have nothing saved, can actually get you there. And so that's what I would say is, first of all, do you want it? Like, do you want it bad enough?
Mm-hmm. And what are you going to do about it? Because
that's right.
This is really, the ball is in whoever's listening, your court, my court, and it's time to serve it up. Okay, so in your 40s, I think you youngsters are thinking you still have time. And then those of us approaching retirement are like, no, we don't. What is it in the do you have then a graph or something financially in the 40s? You said 20 to 25%, right? Is that for 50s or is 50s. That for the 40s too?
Well, so 50s, it's more like a 30%-ish.
Okay.
Now, if you have some money saved, run a calculator, right? A calculator, there's, NerdWallet has a great one. Vanguard has a great one. Just run a retirement calculator and say, like, okay, how much money am I going to need at this lifestyle if I want to continue this lifestyle into retirement, which most people do. And put your age in there, put when you want to stop working or be able to stop working. For a lot of people, that's age 65. And then the calculator will tell you, here's how much money you would need to save starting now every single year to reach that. So in general, if people haven't ever saved, in your 40s, it's going to be 20 to 25%. In your 50s, it's going to be somewhere 30% plus.
All right. I'm kind of doing the math there. So this is how we look at it. Those of us who have seen 60, on a birthday cake. My husband always says, this is how much we want to enjoy monthly when we retire. And that's how he's planning. Now, we're still depending on Social Security. What do you think about people in their 40s and 50s? Do you think it's a sure bet?
Yeah, I think so. So
okay.
we factor in Social Security to our assumptions. Now, if you make a lot of money, so if you're in that, group that's making $150,000 plus, remember, Social Security is just not going to be as big of an impact on your finances. So, if people who are middle income, luckily for them, catching up is not so hard because Social Security could still be, 50 to 60% replacement on their income. That's just not the case with folks who make a little bit more money. And that's why, especially in this age group, we have to be a lot more careful, Social Security or not, about making sure that we are actually paying ourselves first, putting that money before we spend on anything else into these accounts to make sure that money is there so that we can live. Like you said, could you imagine if your conversation right now over the dinner table is, how am I going to pay for my medications? How am I going to pay for my rent? How am I going to pay the mortgage that I never paid off by the time I retired? That is not the conversation you want to be having. Imagine, put yourself in your shoes. That's what I would say for listeners. What are the conversations you want to be having? I want to be having a conversation about, how am I going to go visit my kids or grandkids? How can we take a family vacation together and we foot the bill? These are the kinds of conversations that I know I want to be having, not, how do we stretch this fixed income via Social Security until the next month? That's a conversation a lot of people are having to have right now. And it's tough.
When do we start growing? My kids have always heard this, and I know people are going to wreck their cars listening going, well, sounds like a position of privilege. It does not. But we've always been a family of, you pay cash for cars, but hey, we buy used cars. So We're not buying the latest and greatest, and we're doing that just because we hate interest around here. But my son, who someone smashed his car to pieces in Dallas, and now
so
he's going to have to, and it was not his fault, but he'll get some money out of that, and then he'll pay for the rest. But he's like, well, I don't. He goes, I've been raised as a Fisher. I don't spend a lot of money on cars, and I'm going to be fine, because he started seeing his peers when he graduated in college in 2019. They were engineers going to make good money. Sarah-Catherine, they were buying $65,000 cars. They were having $2,000 a month in rent in Dallas and Houston, because a lot of them went to oil and gas. And he was like, Mom, he did the calculator of how much you should be putting aside, for a car, for housing and maybe debt. But he was like, Mom, this is over half their income right there. So when do you think it's time to be grown-ups and start saying, you know what, and start looking at paying cash for a used car?
Oh my gosh, it's like magical. Okay, so first of all, Lisa, what you just said is let's just all establish it's very un-American of you. So we're right. So we're supposed to buy frequently, buy new, and we're supposed to take on a lot of debt. So I'm a little afraid that looks like you're well hidden in a shoe closet right now. Right. It'll take some time for people to come storm your doors and come find you.
Right, my studio. Right, you're right. I know, it's crazy.
Okay, so if anyone sees armed guards coming into Lisa Fisher's house,
that's it.
Call the police. Okay, so first of all, that's just not what we do around here. But the tides are turning. I was just talking to a banker last week who said their average rate on a car loan, I hope you're sitting down. It looks like you're sitting down.
I'm holding on.
9%.
Come on. 9. The age of consumerism. Oh my gosh.
Of buying on debt, of the $65,000 finance card, it's over. So here's what's cool. It was real hard to ask people to save ahead for a car when they could just go get a 0% car loan, right? Like, it was really, really hard.
Right. Those days are behind us.
But the reason I could tell someone to do it was esoteric. It was like, look, you'll buy less car, because it's harder to save ahead for a car than to just spontaneously see the car you want in the lot. And it says, oh, your car payment's going to be $500. And you're thinking, I'm buying this brand new, awesome Bluetooth, whatever car for $500. Meanwhile, 6 years later, you're still paying on what is now an old car where the Bluetooth is broken. Okay, that was the argument before, and it was like almost impossible to make. Now it's not impossible to make.
Right.
The age of saving is here. We're finally here. We're going to get rewarded for our savings. We're going to get penalized for taking on debt. And it happened so fast. Like, I don't even think people have caught up to the whiplash. But this is, if you want to enter a mindset of a saver, you've never entered a better time to do it. Because people are going to reward you for your savings. You're going to get paid via interest. And you're not even going to be tempted to go buy that car. Who's going to pay 9% interest on a car loan? Are you?
No, but there are a lot of people are, because they don't understand how it works, and that and my kids are not people who make big incomes. They're only 2 are college educated. 1 has a great career outside of being college educated, but they all are. I mean, that's kind of in their DNA. That's their savings DNA. Because you and I first met when I did that article for that statewide publication. And when I came to you, it was about savers and spenders. And when I was in that editorial meeting and saying, there were even people in that room who didn't have enough cash if their washer and dryer went out. Mm-hmm. And I know they made good money, because a lot of them were in sales. A lot of them were on the editorial staff that doesn't make as much, but then you dial it back, but it's the fact that people for so long were so unprepared. Maybe COVID helped us at that point reevaluate some things. We were home. We were looking at finances because our supplemental income maybe had dropped. I don't know what it was. Well, also the stock market and interest rates. When I built this home, because we're neighbors, I was at I think maybe we're at 2.75%. And now, as you know, home rates are about 7%.
Right.
So maybe that has turned the tide in consumption. What do you think about that?
So I'm hopeful that that will be the case, but we're not seeing it just yet.
Okay.
I think that people are still in the spender mindset.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a little tough to turn around. It's going to be painful. So in our retirement plans, we're seeing people cashing out. We're seeing people take loans to pay off credit cards.
What do you
Healthcare costs
think
are
about
going
that?
up.
So what do you think about cashing out because you're penalized?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, obviously it's terrible. No. We're doing what we know to do, which is to say, okay, we need this mindset shift. And we're focusing on building emergency funds now. Build it
Okay.
now. So pay yourself first into retirement. We got to have that. But a lot of people now can go to their HR department and give them their savings account number, and they can actually payroll deduct directly into their own savings account. And that is a powerful tool. As you and I talked about for that magazine, I don't just believe in using motivation to save, because our brains are not known to hang on to motivation. And this is something I bet you
Yeah.
could talk about
Yeah.
a lot smarter when it comes to health.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to find ways
You're right.
to circumvent an unmotivated brain 3 months or 4 months down the road. And the key to that is automation. So if you say to yourself, so I was with a woman yesterday, and she was doing just that, setting up her payroll deduction, $50 a pay period into an emergency fund. And then we went the added step of saying, do you want this to happen every single pay period? And we were doing the calculation that this was going to be, over $1,000 saved, pretty quickly.
Good.
And she
Good.
was like, I've never had that much money liquid, in my
Wow.
life, but this is
Wow.
going to happen. So it's that extra step of
Good.
automation. So yes, it's the pay yourself first for retirement. And then it's also putting a bulletproof vest around your retirement by having an emergency fund so that you don't even get tempted to take a loan or a withdrawal from that account.
And what would that be, behind bears at the zoo, and they keep the money in a honey pot? I mean, what can people do to not get bit?
I mean, some people, I'll tell you, so first of all, I believe that you start your emergency fund separate from your own bank. So if you have a bank,
Smart.
at Arvest, start it at
Yeah.
AFCU,
Okay.
Federal Credit Union, start it somewhere else. Or they're great online banks. They're paying a lot of interest right now
Yeah.
on accounts. Put it there. So and then throw away the key. The key being your account number. Make it hard to remember how to get that money.
Good.
And
Yeah.
try to forget about it. And then you'll find, if you really are an emergency, you will have very fast recall of where you have pots of money. And that bear will find that honey pot.
Yeah. Well, here, people listening, tell me, because I'll lose it by the time it's 3:00 today. I always tell my kids, if there's something you want lost, give it to your mother. But if you want something saved, don't give it to me, because I'll never remember. Your book is it But First Save 10?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
and
right.
so that's your philosophy of whatever you do. It's but first, it's putting something aside. You were saying this before it was cool. Okay. You were saying it in 2019. Did you publish that 19 or 20?
I published it in 2020. So are you saying I'm cool?
Oh, you're way cool. I mean, come on. You can salsa dance. You're beautiful. You're smart. You're kind of the perfect woman. You can do
feel
math.
Well, in the book, I'm very clear about my inability to do math well, but I do math well enough to add, which is all you have to do when you're talking about finances. Well, I feel like I got something major out of this, Lisa. If you think I'm cool, then I'll take it. Thank you.
No, I think you're really cool.
Yeah, so the book is about paying yourself first. That's it. Pay yourself first. And it's for a 23-year-old starting out who didn't get the messages that most of us, she's getting the message to this book that a lot of us didn't get when we were starting our careers, which is no matter what, put your first 10% that you make into an account for your future self, and just have that as a discipline. I mean, it's hard to get excited about retirement at the age of 23 when you're like, gosh, why am I excited about stopping work? I'm excited about starting work.
Right.
But this is just what we do. So we're just trying to normalize it. Okay. So we're trying to figure that out for 23-year-olds. But in the meantime, how about the 40-year-olds like me and the 50-year-old, that didn't get this message? You know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to myself. I'm sorry to other people that wasn't something normal. that we now go and we have Save 10 talks to graduating women at most universities here in Arkansas now,
Good.
and they get a copy of my book. The
Thank
Women's
you.
Foundation of Arkansas is sponsoring this, and it's
Awesome.
and the Department of Ed. It's incredible. But for those of us that didn't get that message, didn't get that book, what do? We bite the bullet. We still pay ourselves first. Yes, we lost years. Yes, we lost compounding in the stock market. But you know what? Best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is today.
That's right.
So just do it.
Well, you and I know that, I mean, those of us on Facebook, those of you who are listening outside of Little Rock, there's a private Facebook group called Little Rock Power Women. And I'm sure, Sarah-Catherine, you're on it. And so it's this group that you have to live in Little Rock or Central Arkansas, and we help each other, right? It's quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. But so many times, and I say this now with my serious face, there are women who are saying, I've been married for 30 years. I'm going through a divorce. I'm left with nothing. I have a child. He has the money, or he's going to take half my retirement. My heart skips a beat for those women, because though they may have been told and this isn't any relationship. It's it could be anything, right? Where you didn't have agency over your own money, but you didn't realize it because no one told you needed to have agency or ownership over it. So a lot of people are starting over, not just the person who said, oops, I didn't save, but the person who said, I'm a new widow or widower. I'm a new divorcee. I have a special needs child. Things are more expensive. I have an illness. So that's why I think it's so valuable for what you're saying, that it is an umbrella over anyone. I mean, I am provided for well now, but the economy could go bad. I could lose my husband in a tragic accident. It doesn't mean everything's taken care of, but I know that we're doing everything we can to head off any crisis. I know you
Lisa, there are three huge points out of what you just said that, I mean, we could have an entire show on, because you're absolutely right. First of all, you know the plan.
Yeah.
So you know your plan.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Second of all, so many women don't know the plan. And there is actual conditioning that happens in our faiths, in our religious communities, where we are told that the men are in charge of our money and to have blind trust. Mm-hmm. We have to stop this. Mm-hmm. We can absolutely have the man take the lead in finances, mm-hmm. or have the woman take that. It doesn't matter. It actually does work when one person is kind of the point person, right?
That's right.
Like
someone
takes the point. But that doesn't mean blind faith. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you have zero understanding of what the plan is. Right. And that is how so many women get blindsided. It's not because men are bad with money. It's just that unilaterally, it seems that if someone's taking the lead, it's going to be the guy. And by having zero involvement, whether you're man or woman, you're going to lose out potentially if that's not being handled. And that is what I see a lot. And then mm-hmm. third of all, this is what has to happen. If you are in that situation and you have been blindsided, and you're in your 40s or your 50s, here's what you're up against is you're up against a lifestyle that has been set. So your brain has codified it. You're in it.
That's important. Yeah.
You have to take away all assumptions about lifestyle, and as quickly as you possibly can, right size your lifestyle to fit whatever those means are from your income or whatever settlement you have, whatever is going to make it last. Because I'll tell you what, there is no physical item or service that you can have done on you that is going to replace the feeling of peace by knowing what your future is going to be and where that money is going to be, and that you're going to be taken care of. And I can promise you that, because if I hadn't seen it over the last 12 years of doing this, of time and time again, women going down one of two paths. One is, you know what, I'll worry about it later. I don't want to give up this house because that's what my kids are used to. I mean, we tell stories. They're not bad stories, but they're still stories our brain is telling us to convince us to stay down that same lifestyle. If we can say to ourselves, no, that is a story. That is in a lie, in a sense. I know that I need to take a different path. It's the path. path less taken.
Yeah.
But it's the one of, you know what? The most important thing in my life is peace and knowing what my future is going to be. And I'm going to downsize until I can find it. I've seen women especially take that path. They never look back. Never. No one has ever said to me, I wish I had stayed in that house with the mortgage that was too big. Never.
Hell
said
no.
it.
I'm sorry to cuss. Hell no.
Right.
No. And, you know, when you and I go on the road, when people start hiring us for the Lisa and Sarah-Catherine show, the reason I'm going to piggyback that statement is that that is the same perspective with health that I have with people. What worry and fear do to your health is really worse than the cigarettes and the booze, because of what it does to your cortisol, what it does to your hormones, and then what it does for your future. So we're both talking about investing in futures, and not just future stock market. I don't want you to think pork bellies. I want you to think your financial future and your health future. You are so good. We're out of time, but we're going to have you back because I know Darren, producer, is chomping at the bit for this. But you are a gem. Are you doing, because, you know, I've been trying to get you to do a podcast forever. Did you ever do one? Did you ever start one?
No, I'm just so privileged to get to be on this podcast. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of persistence and dedication and talent, and you have all of those things.
Well, you're sweet.
And so, no, but thank you for asking and letting me come on and talk to you. I appreciate it.
Well, we're out of time, but my favorite thing that I told you, I even made you laugh last year when I read at the Sunday morning breakfast table. We don't eat breakfast, we're fasters. Sunday morning coffee table. We were having coffee. I'm reading everything Sarah-Catherine has taught me on health savings accounts, HSAs, to invest in those. When you first told me about it 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, what are you talking about? And now we use it, and then because it has the rollover effect that the flexible spending does not use, it does not have the user lose it, but it is a savings investment for yourself and your health, which you eventually will use. So thank you for that. We'll send people to Aptus, and you're terrific. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fischer Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.